Welcome to Zapier's overview on working with spreadsheets. Today we'll talk about two of the most popular apps on Zapier, Google Sheets and Airtable, their common uses, and a few of the things to be aware of to guarantee their reliability in a Zap. And we'll help you create more complex workflows and workarounds too. Spreadsheets are a way to store data in a table format. Your data is stored in cells that are defined by the column number or name, as well as the row number. This makes it a perfect tool to store complex data structures in an easy-to-reference format that's also user-friendly and easily read by other programs and services like Zapier. Since it's both basic and powerful, Google Sheets is a perfect tool for most use cases in Zapier, with the added benefit of being free. With our Google Sheets app, you can trigger Zaps off new and updated rows, you can look up rows, create and update existing rows, and even more. While this app is reliable and robust, there are a few things to keep in mind to avoid issues while using Google Sheets with Zapier. When you create your Google Sheet, be sure that the very first row is used as the header, giving each column a name. Zapier needs to see the first row with names in order for us to read the sheet properly in the Zap. We suggest freezing those rows to better see the separation between those headers and the rest of your data. It is so important that your sheet reads exactly like this: header row, and then rows of data underneath. Simple, right? With Google Sheets, you can't have big gaps in your sheet, headers for different sections in the sheet, or formulas. Formulas are best handled using Airtable, which we'll talk about more at the end of this lesson. You'll also want to avoid naming the spreadsheet or the worksheet using punctuation, especially colons, as that can break Zapier's ability to read the sheet. If you ever need to edit the number or names of columns in a worksheet, turn the Zap off first. We rely on the format of the sheet as it exists when the Zap is first turned on to read the contents of your sheet when the Zap runs. This means if the format changes without the Zap being turned off and then back on, it can break our ability to return all the data in the row that we trigger from. We essentially lose our place, and in some cases, this can stop the Zap from triggering altogether. So the process is like this: turn the Zap off, make the change you need, turn the Zap back on. When Zapier writes to the Google Sheet, we create new rows below any blank rows that exist in the sheet. If you ever run into an issue where the create row action ran successfully, but you can't find the data, look through your sheet and you'll likely find a blank row someplace above or below that's causing the data to arrive out of order. Just delete the empty row and try again. It's also important to avoid using any sort functions on the Google Sheet while you have Zaps enabled watching for changes. It can trigger events and cause other unintended issues. If you need to sort your data and view that data set in a different way, you're probably best using Airtable instead, but we'll get to that in just a bit. So what happens if you run into an issue with the Zap utilizing Google Sheets? What do you do? Well, if you happen to come across a Google Sheets trigger in a Zap that is no longer triggering, or if it returns broken or incomplete data, the best thing to do would be to turn the Zap off, look over the format of the sheet to make sure it's correct, and then turn the Zap on and test again. This is the best way to troubleshoot your Zap without causing any additional issues. One of Google Sheets' limitations on Zapier that can't be fixed by cycling the Zap off and on again is the dynamic mapping of the spreadsheet or worksheet IDs into Google Sheets actions. That means selecting a spreadsheet or worksheet by passing in their unique IDs through the Use a Custom Value option. The reason this doesn't work is that we need to first do a lookup of the spreadsheet in order to return a list of worksheets to choose from, and then validate that choice. When you use a custom value, both lookups try to happen at the same time, rather than in succession, and your Zap will run into an error. We've gone over most of the major caveats in this lesson, but make sure you visit our Help Center for a full list of edge cases and novel workarounds to consider when you make more advanced workflows. Alright, enough of what we can't do. Let's talk more about the versatility of triggering on new records. Using a spreadsheet app in Zapier gives you a lot of control over what we consider to be a new row or record. Anytime you paste data into a sheet, we know that's an item we should process, and we'll attempt to do so the next time the Zap runs. Using this logic, you can actually trigger on old or existing data in the trigger spreadsheet. So long as that service allows you to export your data in a CSV formatted file, you can use Google Sheets to trigger off existing data. Just set up a new spreadsheet, have your Zap monitor for new rows, and then paste those rows in to trigger your Zap and send that data to whichever action apps you need. Something you want to be careful of when triggering on a new record or row is that your Zap is going to check for new data every 5 or 15 minutes, regardless of whether or not you finish filling out the row. To work around this, use the updated row trigger for Google Sheets instead, and add a filter to only continue on to the next action in your Zap if a particular field is filled out or contains a certain value. You could set the filter to look at the last field you fill out, so if it doesn't have an entry, the Zap doesn't continue. Another option is to use an app called Airtable to create more advanced rules around triggering. Aside from being able to set up all kinds of awesome relational database mapping, this is where Airtable really shines. Airtable lets you interact with a spreadsheet like Google Sheets, but it also gives you the ability to create views. Views allow you to generate unique worksheet-like looks at the same data, but that matches specific conditions you define with Airtable's filtering. Doing this means that only records meeting certain conditions will appear in that particular view, and will then trigger your Zap. This is a great way to set up more advanced filtering outside of your Zap, and it doesn't cost you another task when the Zap runs, like if you had used a filter step instead. It's also a great way to sort and filter your data in any way you want, but have a separate view dedicated for your Zap, so nothing gets messed up while interacting with your records in another view. Another of Airtable's biggest strength is its ability to handle formulas. Remember when we said that adding formulas in your Google Sheet would break your Zap? Well, because Airtable handles formulas as part of the column type, and they don't live in a specific cell, you can use them in your table, have them calculate whatever you need, and then use the newly calculated data in Zapier. On the flip side, because the formula functionality is at a column type level, you can easily write to the table regardless of whether the values from the column you're writing into are being used in another column's formula. Spreadsheet apps are some of the most powerful apps on Zapier just due to the sheer number of possibilities when using them with your Zaps. Hopefully you now have a better grasp on how not only to set them up, but also how to troubleshoot any issues that might arise and feel confident in choosing the app that's best suited for your workflow. You hear it a lot, but honestly, test them out, play around, create some Zaps, and test. That's the best way to learn how spreadsheets work with Zapier. Have a good day.